in EU, like it's very rare that you see a game that's everyone is 100% focused.
Yeah. The degree of consistency, I don't understand how you guys can't find it.
I mean, I think G2 and us, we have like really similar playstyle.
Welcome to episode 21 of the EUphoria podcast, ahead of our Munich Roadshow. As always, we're available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and SoundCloud. And of course, this week, Vedius is joining me alongside Razork.
We talk about all sorts of things. The philosophy of League of Legends, what it takes to be a good team. What is a strong mental? Razork gave us great insight, and you're definitely going to want to hear it.
Absolutely are. Also, we found out whether or not FNATIC are silver or bronze on their worst day. It was a hotly debated topic, so let's get into it. Welcome, Razork. Episode 21. Good to have you here, man. Thanks for coming before your weekend of... Well, actually, you're kind of watching more Best of Fives, as many Best of Fives as you're playing in.
Yeah.
How do you... Are you jazzed to be the final boss? Does it feel weird to be the final boss?
I mean, it's good to see others playing before you, right? Yeah. But it's also good to play because if you win, you actually get more practice on stage. So it's not the best, not the worst.
Last year, you went through the lower bracket, right?
Yeah.
Because did you lose in the first round or did you start in the lower bracket?
I think actually we started in the lower bracket.
Yeah. And then you played XL.
Yeah, I remember we played XL, then we beat maybe Matt, I think.
No, it was BDS.
BDS, then Matt.
Yeah. And then it was Mad,
G2.
yes.
And then G2, yeah.
Yep.
This is very different circumstances. Last year you had Oscar broke his hand and you had the emerging wonder, like the wonder substitute.
Yeah.
He did.
And if I remember correctly, he break his hand. Was it after the Excel series? Was it between the Excel series and the VS series?
It was before.
Yeah. So like last minute wonder sub, which I remember at the time, like worked out pretty well, given that the man had not played a lot of League of Legends. Lost pretty gracefully, all things considered.
He played Renekton almost every game.
Yeah.
He said, guys, I will just do whatever you need. If you need me to blind pick Renekton every game, I will just do that.
Yeah.
So I think like overall, not only are you now in the upper bracket, you have the top laner you intended to play with, no offense to Wonder, obviously great guy, filled in very nicely last year, but like things I feel like are pretty good. Otherwise though, I think the big talking point, and we went to Twitter and YouTube to kind of ask about this, is Worlds is on the horizon. Even before we resolve the season finals to figure out who's the best in LEC, we already know our top three teams. Overall, we wanted to know what is the most stacked role that we are sending to Worlds. And so my question to you, Razork, is I want to go to you first before I get the opinions of people like your neighbor Tim or Grades of Shay. Wow. People, crazy names, creative. What do you actually think? Like obviously we know everyone we're sending to Worlds, seeding still to be determined, but...
I mean, in my opinion, probably, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think it's jungle.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it must be jungle, then it's mid lane. I think.
Jungle and then mid lane. Jungle I get. Jungle's easy for me, right?
No, just tell me why.
Yeah, give me the...
I mean, I think first go in my mind, it's a bit of a question mark yet for the mid lane. I think Caps and Humanoid, they're pretty good internationally overall. I think they can match the Western mid laners. And I think jungle, I mean, I feel Eljoya, Jake, and me, we're just very good players. And I think, I mean... I capped some Western junglers. Jake also did. And Eljoya, back in his time, he also did, So I think...
Back in his time? You've been here longer, bro. What are you talking about back in his time?
I mean, when he joined the
yeah.
first year, he was actually playing really good,
Yeah.
I think that, for example, last Worlds of Eljoya wasn't the greatest for the team in general for Mad Lions,
No,
So,
yeah. A lot of drama. Yeah, I think Jungle's like the stack one. Jungle was one that... I think a number of people are called out. Caps and Humanoid, I think, is the one where it's interesting to me because it's like, and Nakata said this as well, Caps and Humanoid should be the obvious answer, but I think that Frescow is kind of the question mark. And so for me, it's like, those two have proven themselves. We'll have to see how Fresco does.
I honestly, like, whenever I think about these questions, okay, because this is a personal thing for me, people are like, yo, Vedi, where's your top 20 list? And I'm like... Making those lists is really exhausting and a lot of hard work and people just yell at you for it. But also, I think that it's very unreasonable to never put a Western player in those things.
Yeah.
But if you ask Reddit, they don't want any Western players in those top 20 lists.
But we didn't ask Reddit. We asked you for a top 20 list.
I know. But like, I remember I did one in 2019, and I don't remember how many, but I think I had 3 G2 players. I think I had Wonder, Caps, and Mickey in my top 20 list.
Idiot.
And then I put Caps in my top 10 as well.
Which I think is like...
But I think I had him at number 8 or something. I don't remember the list exactly. But like, I guess for me, obviously, like, people are very negative on EU right now. And like, when we think about the most stacked role, I'm super into this, the fact that you have confidence in our jungle role. Because like, right now, I think that you're the best performing jungler. Not to stroke your ego or anything, but like...
don't get cocky. You have to understand, half the comments are like, no, you've cursed him.
Yeah.
Like, people are really convinced we doomed your team by inviting you on a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, Matt did lose. They did lose to Fnatic, I'm just saying. But...
we give one, we take one. That's the rules.
Yeah. But do you think that we have players that could probably be top 20 in the world, like in Europe?
I think, yeah, for sure we have them. I mean, Caps has to be there.
Yeah.
In my opinion, no matter what. I think I can put Mickey too. I think Mickey deserves to be there, in my opinion. Usually he does well in internationals. Sometimes he ends with his Nautilus, but that happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not sure if I would like put myself, because they're really good players right now. Of course. And top 20 is like, yeah.
It's one of those weird things where like you look at it and you're like, you could probably put me in the top 20. And then you realize...
You start to run through the names and you're
that's
like...
That's a lot of really good players.
Yeah, a lot of world-class players in the world. Yeah. Adds up quickly. Mickey's an interesting one because support is the other role that people talked about, right? Mickey and Jun. I think people are mixed on Alvaro, but obviously he's had really high highs, even in his first season. I feel like I would agree, although it is interesting because I feel like our supports are really good when they're really good, but Mickey and Jun share this characteristic. Alvaro does too. Like, they love dying, bro. I mean,
it's just impossible to not think with Nautilus. It is impossible.
But I'm telling you right now, depending on the series, we could interview any support, any of these top 3 supports, and they'd be like, yeah, it's impossible not to Inton Leona. Yeah, it's impossible not to Inton Rakan.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
I mean, with Rakan, maybe it's not good. Yeah. But it's like you playing by and you're expecting not to die at least once in the game. It's kind of hard, no? You just go in and either you die or you kill them all. That's all.
But what were, so talking about the supports, right? I don't think Jun had like the best series he's ever had against Mads. And like, I know that there were a couple times where I forget, was it game 1 or game 2 where he had the Rel and he was getting caught a decent amount? It was like, he died back to back and, can you run us through like what was happening in the bot lane?
Well, I think the issue with Jun is like he's like also very emotional in my opinion, and I feel like if he does a bad play or like he didn't play as good, for example, the game 1, I think he is gonna like bring that into the game 2 for a bit, and I think it's something that he's working on it. That try to reset SAP because. Yeah, game 1 already happened. You cannot change that, and just try to focus on the next one. And I mean, I think he played better and better with the course of the BO5. But I think it's something that we are working on because we tend to tilt a bit from our own mistakes in the game, and then that makes us play worse.
Yeah, I feel like you're. And shout out to FNATIC for making so much content where we really get to see the behind the scenes, where we get to see you like be so outspoken after games. But this has been, I think, a pretty frustrating year, right?
Yeah.
Because we had G2 on last week and they're like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, FNATIC is really good. Like, the liquid losses there of like, this is the first time I've ever seen a G2 member like wave a flag for FNATIC in the like gajillion years that we have made this podcast. They're like really like, no, people need to respect this team. So what is happening kind of that you guys have struggled to like consistently show that super high level? Is it just that you have a lot of players on your team that are like Jun or just struggling with some of these emotional things behind the scenes?
I'm actually not sure what's the thing that makes us like play so bad, but I just feel like us in FNATIC, when we have a bad day, we actually look like absolute bronze. Like, I just feel like there is not a single day that 5 players are like, okay, I'm in my prime today. I'm gonna play how I can. I feel like we tend to underperform in officials, but I think like the practice that we had this year was actually pretty decent. I think last week was a rough one, in my opinion. I think we won like 4 games out of 17 or something. We didn't do too good, but overall we have like really good practice this year. But when it comes to officials, sometimes like I don't know. For example, if you go to the Team Liquid series in the Arabia Saudi tournament, we randomly decide to pick Kassadin on mid. And yeah, I mean, I'm not like, okay, this champion is extremely bad, but it's like no one has a clue how we want to play with Kassadin, and then we just go get a mega stomp by Team Liquid, and then we just go home. You know? So this feels really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds really frustrating because like, how do you solve that problem?
No, I got it. Like, no, man, I got because like. From my perspective, right, Pro League should be more of a formula, right?
Yeah.
Because like I had this really long conversation with Medic a while ago about the gym, right? Where he told me that if you're fueled by motivation to go to the gym, if you're waiting for the motivation, then you're going to be inconsistent. You're not going to go because motivation comes and goes. The way that you get consistent is through discipline and like learning how to control how it is that you feel and learning to build a schedule and a routine. And so I totally understand how, especially in a game like yesterday, I was legitimately screaming in my solo queue games, right? I totally understand how it's easy to get emotional, especially in high pressure situations. But one of the most frustrating things for me when watching FNATIC is that the degree of consistency, I don't understand how you guys can't find it. Because to me, like, there has to be some form of discipline, like, especially like when it comes to draft, like, how does a Kassadin pick happen? Like, how do you guys let that happen? Like, I have to ask that question.
I was gonna say that, like, you're conflating two things, though. I think, like, being an emotional person and struggle, like, not being able to consistently show the peak level performance, like, I get that. You get that. You've come in on days when you're casting and you're like, I'm amped to cast today, and you just have a great cast. You've had days where you come in and you're like, you're gonna have to put a gun to my head to get me on that desk. I am so like down right now.
Yeah, I get that.
So the Kassadin, I'll
give you the discipline thing.
I'll give you the Kassadin. But I'm just gonna say emotion isn't that simple. Like this isn't a Sigma male grind set thing where you just show up and you're like,
I get that. And again, that's why I've prefaced this by saying I understand the emotional element of it.
But the Kassadin is a damn good question. What the hell was this?
I'm just gonna expose humanity.
Yeah, get Marek out there. Marek Brazda, bro.
I don't know. We were in draft and we were like probably doing draft meeting, and coaches were like, maybe we should just ban 6. It's APA based champ. We didn't play against it. We should just ban it. I said no. If you pick 6, it's free win. And then in the draft, we went to 4-5. I think they banned what we wanted to pick against 6. And then he said, "Oh, guys, pick me. Kassadin is mega good here." And it's like,
bro, this is the actual. This is the actual APA superpower, bro. If I swear, if Team Liquid like has a deep run, at least 20%. Sorry, Spawn, but at least 20% of their success will be every single mid laner that goes up against APA being like, nah, if he picks one of those champs, I'm gonna bust his ass.
I mean, not that I have a very deep history of competitive, right? But fun fact, I was the very first XL mid laner, right? Back when they were in the amateur scene, right?
They're doing better now.
They are,
Jackie's is looking like a pretty decent
he's a
upgrade.
bit of an upgrade, I would say, from me. But I definitely understand this idea of, like, you've probably ran into junglers before as well, that you sit there and go, it doesn't matter what I play, I'm just better than them, you can pick me whatever. But then you get into the game, and then they're just playing very solid, which means that you can't just make fun of them. Yeah. And I will say that, like, APA as a player is someone that I think has become very solid, but also, like, that ego is something that I feel EU players need to get more of a check on, because that's not the first time I've heard a player say, like, because, like, I mean, wasn't Dylan literally last week talking caps the same thing, where like all year they were actually practicing the Vayne into the Galio, and then like that man goes like, pick me Vayne, it's really good here, and then Dylan's like, stop, it's not good.
Look, man, people want to play the hyphy shit.
No, I get it.
And to be
no,
fair,
tell us, why does that happen? Like, you must have picks like that too. Where you
It's good to be confident, in my
this
opinion.
man picked Nidalee in a game 5.
Yeah,
Of course this man had that moment. This man was like, pick me Nidalee in a region where that champ has probably had more wins top lane than it has in jungle.
No, tell us. What does that happen?
I think sometimes it's good that you are confident, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I feel like, the Kassadin pick was a bit of like a mix of like ego and he truly thought that Kassadin was good against X.
Fair.
And for example, you can have my game 5 with Nidalee where I just played like 60 games of Nidalee that week or like in practice. And I really wanted to pick that champ because I was very confident on it. And because I know that the champ is strong and it works. So it's a mix of everything, right? Like confidence and just seeing that it can make the team win. Both of these things are actually really important. And I think the Kassadin, in my opinion, he was really confident, but I don't think that could help us to win because I think the champ is actually trust, in my opinion.
But I guess that's always the case with picks like that, right? Where when it works, everyone thinks you're a genius, but when it doesn't, it just looks terrible. Because I guess you can make like Mewin's nearly top, right? Like I personally think that's a useless champ. And like in a lot of those games, I thought that if you had a different champ, the games would have been easier for Mad to play against you. Because like I compare like Kennen versus Nidalee, you guys were losing all game. You found one TP flank, you ult their AD carry, and now suddenly you're back in the game.
Yeah.
But when the coach talked about it, he was like, he's super comfortable and he's very confident on the pick. And he even solo killed Oscar, right? I think the game 2, game 3?
Game 3.
Yeah, game 3.
Yeah, level 2.
So like, that does make sense to me. The confidence angle, I definitely get. And sometimes confidence is all you need in a game of League.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about how people talk about how the level of gameplay in Europe is not the best. But I'm kind of the opinion that when a team is winning, like if we take your game 5, right? Mad, it's just kind of winning, right? Mm-hmm. They're winning. And then a single play happens and then they're not winning anymore. Now the game is kind of moved away from its traditional formula. And now it's moved into a state of, well, they now have to reclaim control, whereas you guys are fighting to create chaos, to create opportunities. So do you feel like League always has to be clean for it to be good League?
No, I don't think like a game with like 0 kills or 0 fights is a good game of League of Legends. I feel like good game of League of Legends is like where you are actually taking your opportunities to pressure the enemies. And your map movements in your team are aligned to actually create that pressure point. I feel like this year I learned the most in the actually how to play macro. I feel like before it was more like a bit of a instinct thing, and I just need to be here because I need to be here, right? But with time, I actually learned how to actually pressure the map, and if you have lead, how you actually need to push waves and what size of the map you need to control, when you have to defend, when you have to attack. I feel like that's something that if you actually analyze and think about it, before I was just not doing it. And now it comes more naturally because I already learned the process of if enemies does this, I have to do this, and then we will have the playbook that the book play or how
playbook.
Playbook.
Yeah.
And then we will just after this play comes, and it just comes naturally for us in the team, and that's something that feels good to know and to learn because before it's this guy is here, I think he's trolling, I'm gonna engage on him, and then they TP on us or enemies start faster, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm dead.
It's funny because I look at your growth, and when you first started, you were playing a lot of creative stuff, right, on Misfits, and you were really aggressive and you were really successful in the early game. Mm-hmm. But I remember people looking at you and being like, yeah, but he's just doing weird, he has no idea where he needs to be on the map. But I really thought that even before this year, I felt like you had a firm handle on the map. I thought you were much better macro, and it's cool to hear that you're even growing past that. How do you look back at 2019 or 2020 Razork versus 2022 versus today? Were you convinced when you started to you got out of Misfits, you're getting better, where you're like, oh, now I've got it figured out, and now you're like, oh, now I've got it figured out? Are you constantly constantly convinced that you're like, oh, now finally I get it, I understand?
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like the game has evolved. I feel like right now more like team game is more important, where before I feel like if you had 5 superstars or 5 really strong players, doesn't really matter if you were doing like really insane macro moves because you were probably gonna win the game, because there were a lot of like fighting and stuff. And yeah, I mean, if I see myself probably Razork 2020, I was just picking Graves, Echo, Listen, and try to like carry myself, because that what I was good at, in my opinion. I was like very good mechanically, and yeah, I was just farming camps. Okay, I get 1 kill, 2 kills, I will just carry the game because I will just be stronger, right? But I feel like with time, I got better at understanding what I have to do and what role I have to do in the team. And I feel like there are many games that I actually carried, even though I was playing like a Maokai or a Sejuani or just Ivern. Like just by being in a good spot all the time and understanding how you have to play around waves and with your like carries. And I think, for example, good example, it was game 3 against Matt. I think with Ivern, I think I did a pretty good job, even though the game was like really, in my opinion, from early game, like Nidalee solo killed us on top. Bro, and then she TP'd bot.
That Tristana side flank from Fresco where you guys can't kill anyone. That fight, I thought it was doomed.
That was a rough
right
one.
After that, like you're like, oh, nobody can die.
Yeah.
Just classic Ivern thing.
Joe, it's really funny about that game because on the cast, I said, I think Matt's going to lose this game. And I don't know if you ever have this, but have you ever been in winning states in a game of League and you're solo queue or something, and you're like, even though I'm winning, I feel like I'm going to lose?
If I see smaller enemy team, I think, if we don't win the game, we might lose. Thank God smaller wasn't in that game, but I actually felt like, okay, if we actually, I think I actually said it in comps, guys, they are trolling. They have Nidalee top, we can win.
That's actually what I thought too. I was like, the later this game goes, the harder it becomes to play Nidalee. And I just didn't think that they could do anything.
But talking about the Nidalee, I feel like it's not a bad pick.
No, sure.
I feel like Mirwin has his reasons why he picked it. And I feel like the champion has pressure against almost any champ in top lane. So that's why they're picking it. They just want a pressure point. And if, for example, on blue side, you can just blind top lane and get Prio no matter what, right? Then the team can do good because she can probably like pressure 1v1, or you can thread dives while the team can be playing both side. But then you have the downside of the champion is like, then you are not that useful. If it comes to like 20-25 minutes, Dragon team fights, you're just going to hit the spear for 200 damage and that's it. So
80 Nidalee is.
Yeah, I mean, I can also understand how like she can be pretty effective at zoning as well, just because she's quite tanky, right? She just finds flanks, just acts. She's very annoying. Casual described her as like a fly when you're trying to sleep. That sometimes you're just like, you just hear the buzzing all the time, and every now and then it just lands on you, and you're just like, that
also,
type of pressure. I think is valuable.
If you ever miss position as like a mid lane, any mid laner in the meta, like she does work. Like in a team fight, she looks useless, right? She looks like an attack steroid and like 200 damage, but like Cougar form with AD still hits like.
So she's very good on silent also.
Yeah, 100%. So I agree, but like when it gets to the late game fights, like it's one of those things where Kennen just as a champion. The reason why I like Kennen is just he always has the ability to change the game, right? Yeah. Because you just need one good ult. But I wanted to come back to something you said earlier, which is about like your understanding of the macro. Do you feel like pros should study more? Because like to expand on that, if I was a coach, one of the first things I would do is every week I would dedicate time to having my team like really sit down and study macro. Like, I don't know what that would look like because I'm not a coach, but like I would try to put a deliberate effort into like making sure that study element is actually there. Because to me, the way that I see pros, the way that they get better is that they either watch VODs or they play the game.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know how like active the teaching process is around here's the step-by-step thing on how to do these things. In this situation, how would you solve this macro problem? What would the next things that you do be here? Like, how do you feel about that? What do you think about this active studying and like the idea of putting more resources into understanding the game rather than just playing it?
I mean, I think for sure, like studying what really good teams are doing, for example, studying what Genji is doing, it will be really good to understand how to play the game because they are doing some plays that I think they were probably the first one doing. Like Chovy, for example, there are many games that they're just pushing away from side lane and then, or even just trying to catch the 3 millies because they know they cannot play on that wave, and then he just TP in top and they're like mid-top playing together on the same wave to take the tower faster than them. Even though they are losing, they're actually trying to make even trades. And I think it's something that we were not doing before in FNATIC. And I feel like Humanoid was really key on this, in my opinion. For us, I didn't have to study much because I was just learning by reviewing with him. But if you don't have a Humanoid in your team that is like really like smart about this, then I think you should probably study what teams are doing, study macro, how they move. But I feel, for example, in FNATIC, we also have a different playstyle than other teams. For example, we don't herald mid that often. And you see every team...
You guys love side lane tier 2.
Yeah.
We were like, I will take that. I don't care. I will take a side lane tier 2 over a Baron. No, I'm kidding. But like, you guys love 650
not
gold.
a Baron.
Yeah, but you guys love that. Like, I'm not never seen, but you guys love that money. That bag of money does it for you. I've seen you. You'll sack a lot of objectives. You're like, we'll take mid 15 minutes, mid tier 1 15
why do you
minutes.
do it? Why
I mean, we just have a different understanding. This is more like Humanoid's theory of how to play the game, right? And we just think that if we can pressure one side lane and make them catch under T1 or really far, then we feel like if we just recall and then go both silence, push them out, then mid tower is free. So we just want to get the extra gold so we are stronger for the mid tower fight. We will have numbers probably. So that's why we just don't feel like heralding for mid tower. There are also some teams that they're like, oh, we have to herald for mid tower because it's the most important tower in the game.
Sure, yeah.
It is important tower, I agree, but we just don't like doing it.
I mean, in your eyes, it's like, hey, if we get this tier 2, if we get this side lane pressure using that herald, then the inevitable like conclusion of that, the next domino to fall, is mid lane tier 1, and we'll be more favored to take that mid lane
tier 1. It depends a lot on how the towers are like in the game. If they are, for example, if you are going bot tower, bot T2, and there is like enemy top T2, and there you're just trading, doing cross map, enemies are top, you're bot.
Yeah.
Then if you have herald, you're always faster. You can put herald on bot, take T2, and then your support jungle can always be basing and going topside. And while you already got the tower, you have your support and jungle on the map, entering topside, trying to cancel their recalls. If enemies are not recalling, then automatically you get enemy topside vision for free, and then you will take mid tower no matter what, because they still have to base, and you will have 5 people on the top. Like, one guy will be on bot, catching, because he has to push all the way, and then you will have 5 people going in enemy jungle. And then once you get top vision, either you take all their camps or you take mid tower, because someone will have to push.
But I feel like the only problem with that is it doesn't always account for all the variables in terms of like, and by variables, I just mean like certain champions push faster than others, right? Yep. And like also certain like if we use APA Zig, for example, you can apply all of that theory. And then the moment you go to put pressure on mid, he just bombs your mid wave. He could even bomb the top wave. And then all of a sudden, all that pressure is gone. And then like, how often do you think about accounting for these variables? Because like, to me, that's one of the big strengths of Gen G is that they very meticulously seem to play around these specific variables rather than trying to look for a single macro theory that can apply to every game.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I feel like you can put the example of if enemy has an Ivia, Sheriff, 6, that they can perma-wave clear and they are feeling extra safe if they have the mid tower. I can see a world where heralding mid is way better than taking T2, right? But you don't see this champion often in competitive. And even though they have these champs, and you imagine herald bot, 4 tower, you still cancel the recalls. That means that you are going to get vision in enemy jungle. Sure. That means that they are going to have to face check you, and you can also take their camps. And if you can take like 3-4 camps spawn, that's insanely amount of XP and gold. If you can cycle the camps, enemy jungle will be completely out of the game, and then you can just play for Drakes. I agree that if you take mid tower, the Drake setup will look much easier for you to actually get vision and make sure that they can't contest. But yeah, that's the way we like to play in FNATIC.
Well, I mean, no, I watched because even in the finals, there was that game where you did Herald top and then you did everything that you just described. Yeah. And then we watched you just sit you like overstacked in mid as 5, and then you just kept pushing back and forth in mid, right? But eventually, in the war of attrition, you guys just won because they just, after a certain amount of time, a certain amount of poke, they can't hold you against that tower anymore, which means that you then converted that. It just meant that you had to spend more time in mid actually sieging that tower because you didn't like, I don't know, it wasn't easy, right? Because of the champs. So like, I see the theory, I see the execution, but then I'm like, so then what happens? Because you clearly have the macro. You clearly have a great understanding of like, I know you know how to build leads because you are the best early game jungler in our league. So then why do things collapse? Why do things go wrong? Why is it that when you get into the game, sometimes the macro just isn't there and it falls apart?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, there are some games that me and June, we are not on the same page, there are also some games that early game does not go well for us. Yeah. And if you are behind in early game, what you kind of want to do is trade as much as possible. You don't want to match them because then you are losing and they're winning. But if you trade and you are both winning and you're trying to catch up gold. But I think like sometimes I might greed for an extra camp and they steal our wave on side lane, and then we have to play on the next wave where enemies are playing on the bot wave. Then the macro, it's a bit fucked. And these mistakes are happening. It's not like, we understand the macro, but every case is very unique.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
Sometimes I'm like, I can maybe go red buff, and I got upset, and then I see a Raptor come up, and I'm like, what if I take these little Raptors too, and then they take our wave, and I'm like, all right, guys, let's play on the next wave.
Weird that we weren't all there at the same time. Hard for me to say, walking in with a bag of gold. No idea what happened, guys. Sorry, I wasn't on time.
That's super fascinating, though, that like, because that I very much believe. So I guess like even these tiniest things, because that's probably where me as a commentator, that like, those are things that I'll miss live, right? Where because I say the very like overarching things where I'm like, okay, FNATIC, dragon spawning in a minute's time. They should be setting up for Drake, right? And so I look at the minimap, I see you guys recalling, and then I'm like, okay, so their plan here is they drop their wards, they go back to base, replenish, grab a few more control wards, they spend as much gold as they can, so they're as strong as they are, and then they come back out onto the map. And then all of a sudden I see like, hang on, they've done all these steps, but they're not actually first on the objective, like Mad is. And then my brain immediately goes, I don't understand this. But it's probably due to like, I wanted to grab my wolves.
But also, like, the Mad classic is Mad love fast plays, bro. Mad will just sit in the bush. Mad will push, and then, like, and this was part of the reason why Game 1, I think, was so Mad favored, is you guys kept falling for the fast play. They just were always in the bush. FNATIC was like, all right, they've recalled. It's now our turn to move up and push vision, and it was never your turn.
But
because
for example,
never recalled.
Think that that's not a good play for them. In our mind, it's like, okay, there is no way that enemies, after they take our T2, they should stay on top, right? Like, they just can't stay. But if they're there and we die, it's good, right?
You're like, it's not the end of the world. The problem is, when it works 4 times in a row, eventually it does become. So I'm with you, and I think this is how Mad get a lot of people, right? But like, it's obviously tricky. So outside of the examples where you take camps, I think the other thing is like Mad, who are obviously a top team, and I think a lot of other teams did this too, but not nearly as much as Mad. And I think occasionally you and G2 will also go for like a little surprise or a little fast play, but like Mad are the addicted to fast plays. Like when they don't know what to do in the mid game, I feel like they're like, what if we just we pushed, they think we're gonna back. What if we just sat in this bush?
Sure.
What if we're just there instead?
But answering your question about the like why, if we base earlier why Matt is first on the objective, it's just like because we also have a different understanding. I mean, I think many teams does it, but if we don't value Drake too high, also, we feel like getting extra gold is way better. If the enemy has 2 Drakes, but you have like mega fat Corki, for example, that he takes 2 towers in the game and he's like 2k gold ahead of enemy mid laner.
That makes sense.
We feel like the next Drakes, there is no way that they're not ours. So we don't care about these Drakes. So we feel like we have to go first to the other side. And then we just push. Then if enemies are defending, then we just get free Drake, right? If they're not defending, then we just destroy every tower that we see in our faces. And then we also get tempo. There is something that, I mean, many teams do, but third Drake is like extra tanky. So you probably need like either a fast jungler to clear Drake or an ADC to hit. So they need extra members to do the Drake, and they cannot be everywhere. If they are on Drake, they're not protecting top. And that's basically how we approach so many situations. You don't have to be a genius, you just need to watch our games.
I get it.
And I mean, that's why there are also some moments that, okay, why Matt is first on the objective? Because maybe we trolled mega hard. But sure. Maybe June was like not basing in time, or I took extra camps and we trolled tempo. But the theory behind it is that one.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I love that you have such a defined approach, because like it's clearly respected by other teams, right? We've heard it from teams. So
also that you can verbalize it so clearly. Because I think going back to the conversation about like why don't people study more, I think the big thing is a lot of players, and you mentioned this yourself, they understand League on an intuitive level, right? When I tell you Syndra got a 30 damage buff on Q, most players don't care. They play 5 games of Syndra, they understand how much Syndra's Q does. Like no one looks at maths, and most people who play don't look at math in spreadsheets, right? They learn from experience. And so the fact that you can so clearly vocalize bam, 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 and obviously it's a lot of practice and you have a lot of people around you to help learn those things is cool, because it lets us have a deeper conversation than, I don't know, man, felt right, because we get that a lot of times. Both are just like, felt good overall. The thing for me is you talk a lot about like your strength playing to side lane. I think we saw it in like the game 2, where it's just like you as Maokai, Humanoid as Corki, you're just ulting to get them off tower. You're taking towers over and over again. I feel like that consistently this year has been like the best version of FNATIC, but it doesn't feel like you're always playing for Humanoid. Like I feel like you've tried a lot of games where like you had the Oscar on Rumble top, he's the guy with the big lead. Do you struggle to play, like you and Humanoid always look rock solid when he's got a good side laner? You guys always look solid. But then I feel like when Noah has a lead and it's not on a hyper carry, or when Oscar has a lead, like we saw a game earlier this season where he was like 2.5k Renekton. I think it was even against Mad that you guys had this Rumble game where he's like 1.3k up, but it looked really hard. Like, is it just harder for you guys generally to play through different players? Is it just because you and Mark have played so long together that it looks cleaner when you guys play side lane? Like, why is it that you can get big leads in other roles, but it doesn't transition to the same like value as it does when like Mark is ahead and you guys are able to play side lane together?
Yeah, I feel like Marek, just as I said, he is like very smart about the game, and he knows really well what to do with his lead. So he's very demanding. He just like moves the pieces. Like in the beginning, he teaches how to move so he can actually snowball his lead. But when it comes to maybe Oscar or Noah, they're a bit more not as demanding. So maybe we commit so many mistakes. For example, if I see 3 camps on top side and I have to be on a bot with because Oscar is mega strong and no one says anything, if I am actually a bit unfocused, then I will just autopilot to top because I'm like, I see 300 gold here and XP. But in theory, I shouldn't go there and I should just go bot and snowball my top laner because he's like 3-0 on Rumble, right?
Yeah.
Or like, there are like million cases that can be like similar to this one. But yeah, I think the main point is like, Marek is really on point when it comes to, hey, Ivan, Jun, come here. Yep. We're playing for enemy topside vision and then we do this. And then it just comes automatically.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
It's interesting because I think when you see Oscar play like tankier champions or Cassante, you can see when he has a lead, he's really confident to like go to other lanes and share it. Like you have the Poppy game at MSI, I think it was, where he had like the Sundering Sky where he's like solo dominating, but then he's leaving and he's helping other people. Yeah. And to me, I'd always get the impression that like when Oscar's playing for other people with a lead, when it was the Zac, and obviously Zac was just kind of strong generally, right? But like he looks like, damn, this man knows how to move around a map and make shit happen. But then when it's like him with a lead and the right choices to play for himself on a Rumble, on a Renekton, often it feels like the pieces don't quite align. So I guess that kind of makes sense in the context of he knows how to, it seems to me he knows how to help other people, but he doesn't always know or doesn't feel confident to say, give me this is what I need.
He's just used to be really the weak side player.
Yeah.
And I feel like Oscar's strengths are, in my opinion, his laning phase is very good. He pressures you a lot in laning phase. And I feel like he actually weak side very well. But when he has to carry or like play a champ, it has to be more us taking care of him than him demanding resources. And it's something that he is like working on it. And I think he's doing pretty okay, in my opinion. Like with the Jax, for example, they're like back in like last year, he was also carrying the games alone.
The only thing I'll say is that, like, because we talked to Mirwan about this, and he was like, I was like, oh, you know, I don't remember what series it was where you guys were going to play against each other. How do you feel about playing against Oscar? You guys have a lot of history. And he's like, yeah, I just wish he'd go back to the Spain days where he would just play psycho shit. And I just forgot that was even his identity. Because we've seen him be Mr. Reliable for so long, right? He came in with you guys. He had that first week where it was like the good Jace game, a couple bad games. You know, he had a pretty dramatic start is how I would phrase it, right? But now I've just gotten used to thinking of him as not necessarily the tank guy, but the weak side guy, right? The guy who will take whatever matchup and he'll be fine. And it would be crazy to see him get back to that like OG, not psycho picks. It wasn't as crazy as Mirror one, but there was a lot more Camille's. There was a lot more, you know, side lane 1-3-1 kind of champs.
What I think is super fascinating is how you talk about player personality, and it's something that it's probably the thing I think the least about, like as an outsider, because I look at things kind of very objectively, right? I try to talk about the things that I can see and the things that I have kind of control over. So one of the main reasons why I always hate Coach of the Split things, because I have no idea. How am I supposed to know?
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I love Coach of the Split, bro. It's so funny. But that's, I like, because it gives me a little bit more insight into like, one of my biggest frustrations with FNATIC was that like going into MSI and even at MSI, I felt like that you guys had this really bad habit where you just fought like 4v5. Like I remember one game specifically where like Noah was really fed on Zaya, and I don't know who you were playing or why. I just remember he went to catch the mid wave, and then you guys like started a fight at blue, and he's like on the wave in mid while the fight happens. And a part of me sits there and goes like, I guess a large part of that is this mentality difference, or like the communication that happens, because like in that instance, I could imagine Noah is just doing what he thinks is the correct play, right? Which is like, we always need to have the mid wave. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a play over dragon or something. So like we have to get this push. If my team is fighting for vision, then like it makes sense that they're here and I'm here, and then we regroup and then we do the thing. So like, is this one of those situations where certain members of the team, like maybe you're already fed or Humanoid's already fed, and he says, I think we should fight. And then obviously it's like less of a problem now, but I'm curious as to like, is that a personality thing? Is that a shot calling thing? Like, how do these things kind of happen?
I think it can be a bit lack of knowledge, or just like be playing by instinct, in my opinion. I feel like I don't remember the play that you are talking about, but probably we are just trolling. Like, I mean, we're probably missing step there, because if, for example, Noah is really strong and then we're just fighting in blue, then we're just taking unnecessary fight. That's really not necessary to win the game. But I'm pretty sure we probably went to side lane, and after side lane we should just go mid, try to get vision and set up for something that's coming up. Maybe Drake, Nasser, I don't remember. But fighting on enemy blue, it's probably mega troll. So we're just missing steps there, and that's something that happens in many teams, in my opinion, that someone just see a play but don't think on all the consequences, like, oh, enemies should be here, so we shouldn't fight. He probably thought, okay, this guy is trolling, he's alone. But in reality, he wasn't trolling. He was where he had to be because they had the numbers advantage, or you're not playing around your most fed member. And these things are like, really silly mistakes, but I think it happens in every single team.
I think it happens a lot. I mean, even your game one, right? The fight where Mad kind of is waiting in the brush and breaks the game open. I feel like you guys are like in a confident position. You technically have more members closer, but they just blow Jun up, I think, before the fight even starts. And then, well, there's your man disadvantage, right? But on paper, if you're slightly closer together, you have a man advantage. You can see why you would like be comfortable to skip taking the mid wave, or why you think that like that play might be good. But there's a lot of things that slip through. One thing you mentioned for yourself is like, sometimes you're on autopilot, right? If you're not 100% locked in, you're just like jungler brain. There's a Raptor. Great. Is that a thing that, like, I feel like it's probably a pro player thing for everything, but do you feel like you see that in your teammates as well too? Because you talked a lot about like, you can't find the day where all 5 Fnatic players are like ready to ascend to godhood. You get like 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. You can never find 5 out of 5. Do you feel like that's happening with your teammates too, where they're just like taking waves that they shouldn't, grabbing something that they shouldn't, stepping up where they can't, and it's just this matter of like, when everyone's firing together, Fnatic looks insane, but there's just always that little thing slipping through the cracks? Yeah,
I mean, I think that's something that happens more in like scrims. Like, people are like, no pressure, they're like, maybe this last game, and they're like, oh yeah, I know I shouldn't take this wave, but I will just take it and see if they punish me or no. Sometimes enemy team does not punish you, and you think that what you are doing is a good play, but in reality it's not, because you should die on that wave. And I think it happens the same to me. And I think it's a jungle thing that if you are, for example, not farming for a while and you know that you have to be on certain wave or the map will look very bad for you, and you go through the jungle and you see all the camps looking at you, it's hard to resist to not farm them.
Yeah.
No, makes sense.
Sometimes you have the it's like what, like how do you say, like you voluntarily do something. I don't know how it's
the
called.
urge, like you need to do it, or like you resist the temptation.
Yeah. Something like that.
So you don't take the camp. You just say no. Like I don't need this 100 gold.
Yeah.
You
sometimes
resist.
you actually do that, and sometimes when you are like, not too focused, you are like, I'm just gonna take the camp and see what happens. Obviously, for example, you are losing the game and the mood is not the best because you are like, we are like really behind. So the best play for me is not to take the camp because we need to do this, but it just feels good because I will get 100 gold if I get this blue buff right now. But
so do you, like, because that concept of focus ties into that comment that I made about discipline earlier, right?
Yeah.
Where like every decision you make, you almost like second guess it, but also when you're very focused, it's almost like you have the energy to second guess each of these choices.
Yeah.
So when you play against better teams, who was it that you played against at MSI, your first round? Was it Gen G?
It was Top Esports, I think.
It was Top Esports. Was that a game where or a series that you felt like that you were super focused in, that you felt like that this is one where I need to make all the correct decisions?
We felt like, we were all more disciplined in terms of like, this team, it's actually a really good team. I feel like, adding to your question, I feel like FNATIC, we always match the enemy level.
Yeah, I would agree to an extent.
It's not like we tend to disrespect, but we don't try as hard, I feel like.
Gen G was your first round opponent.
I thought it was Gen G. I did think it was Gen G.
We played Top Esports too in MSI, no?
Top Esports?
Maybe it was
losers,
groups.
Then it was TL. TES was a qualification map. Excuse me, plans. I forgot you guys were playing.
Play-ins, yeah.
Oh yeah, we were in plans.
Yeah, I forgot about plans entirely. No, you're right. TES first. You beat GAM, then you lost Top Esports.
Oh yeah, against Gen G, we knew. Okay, we were not the favorites.
Because I remember everyone, like, it was fascinating. Because I remember specifically, I cast that series, and I thought to myself, like, they were so close.
I know, I was so mad because everyone's like, it's like, guys, it was like. There was actually moments in this 3-0, and people were like, "It was 3-0, bro. You're coping."
But like,
EU analysts, I was like, "No, you
this
don't."
is the thing. But like, but also, I remember Dom saying, and I hope I don't misquote him, but he was saying that he thought that this was the worst version of Gen G, whereas my opinion was you dragged Gen G into the mud to make them look worse. Like that's how I felt.
Maybe.
Like my opinion was that like you were a team that like, for better or worse, you can bring a team to your level, right? Where like, whether it be you elevating or you dragging them down, it's kind of like you're in a FNATIC game, you're playing FNATIC's game.
Yep.
And that was, to me, what impressed me about the series versus Gen G, because it felt to me like that they were definitely making mistakes, don't get me wrong. I remember one Cassante play, I think, where he just died bot for like no reason at all. But like, yeah, like my instincts hearing about everything that you say, and I'm glad that you kind of reaffirm that, is that you see different teams differently. And there's a certain motivation within you as a pro player that very much affects your ability to focus. And the moment that you see an opponent that you like respect or admire, or like, I mean, you told me you've been studying Chovy all year, so you get into a series versus Chovy, it's almost like, this is the guy, like beating him must mean a lot to you. And so then you get into that series and like, you must be super focused. And then that makes me think like, oh, is this how we see the best version of FNATIC, where you're always a focused version of FNATIC?
This is because you made a couple assumptions in there too. And I just want to actually ask the question. It's like, is it as simple as when you play against a team that is considered or respected very well, or you respect it, you guys instantly lock in, it's really easy to focus? Or is there more to it than that? Is it harder for you guys to actually like, have you guys found the formula for the best version of FNATIC yet? And like, what does that look like? Is it as simple as like, I know Mark is obviously super motivated every time you go international. I can totally understand that. But for FNATIC as a whole, what is it is it the nature of the opponent that decides that, like, how motivated, how locked in you are? Is it just how you feel on the day? Like, what is the actual? I know it's not a scientific answer, but like, give us a little bit of the science here, because this has been a year-long thing for FNATIC, right? Is like, yeah, you show up against Gen G and it's easy to say, hey, that's because they're a great team and you guys are, no one expects anything. So you're double locked in because you respect them and you're the underdog, so you can just play good. But like, what is the actual, how do we get good FNATIC more regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, actually. I feel like when we play better teams, we usually like are more disciplined. That was what Vedius was saying. And I think when we are more disciplined, I feel like we are all really locked in and we're like, okay, we don't have to be on this wave because if enemy is good, I would die on this wave and this type of things. So I'm not sure at all. It's like a FNATIC thing, I would say. Like when we play against like a really bad team or we are not focused, like I feel like we are actually silver players sometimes.
Earlier it was bronze, so you got better.
Yeah, or bronze, yeah. But yeah, I think as a general note, there are some days that you just don't know why, but you just wake up and they're like, holy, I'm gonna complete 1v9 today.
Yeah.
And it actually happens. Where sometimes it's like, nah, I'm not feeling that good, but you still do okay. But
it's different, right?
It's different,
like, yeah. I mean,
but don't you think that's a problem? Like,
I mean, it is a problem, but I think it's like the human, like
human condition. But also, like, it's one of those things where it's like, I think that the entire field of sports psychology is trying to find the formula to get you to wake up like that.
Yeah,
most days.
Because I think for me, right, I've heard a lot of people say that they hate the best of one format, which I get, right? I totally understand that. But internationally, the Korean teams, like, they only ever went 5-1 or 4-2. Like, that's just what they did. They found so much consistency in the world's old best of one format. And the reason why, like, I bring is like full circle. Like, I know we originally started about Worlds, and I'm going to bring us back a little bit, and
then eventually onward. But
yeah. It's mainly just because, like, we want to see EU teams perform internationally, and obviously the first thing that people go to is like, well, on an individual level, we're not as good as them. And I would sit there and go, well, when DRX won Worlds, as much as I admit that like that was more of a flash in a pan than a consistency, DRX was the foundation to prove that it's not always about individual talent. It is often about just having a clear game plan, knowing how you want to play the game, having a good understanding of the meta, so the meta can fit into your game plan and you know how to operate that, and then ultimately performing and working as a team.
I also feel like, to be fair though, to the DRX and even like the most recent T1 win, right? It's those teams, I don't think it's as much of them like molding to fit the meta. It's like they have an identity that happened to slot in very well.
Maybe that's also true, right? That's also fine. But because like I do think the teams that won Worlds are always the ones that either define the meta or the ones that the meta fits them the most, right? Like you talked about the game always changing. The patch has a huge influence on who's the best team. But anyway, my main point was that like when I think about EU competing internationally, like the one thing that I feel we're always lacking is that element of discipline. Like I don't feel like that we can find that level of consistency that specifically the Korean teams get. But also the LPL teams in the same way. Like I feel like I get a lot of the same things from BLG when I see them inside. So I just wanted your take on it ultimately, because you have the most experience out of anyone on this table when it comes to not only competing internationally, but competing domestically. And
does
like,
that one Smash tournament we went to count as an international competition? It was Vienna.
But yeah, I'm no, it doesn't.
I'm just yes.
But yeah, I'm super curious on your take. Like, how do you differentiate between how we play in Europe and how they play internationally?
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think the main point is discipline, and I feel like one thing that the Asian teams are doing very well is like in terms of practice. They actually practice very well in terms of like setups, Drake setups, and like they are not undisciplined. Where I think in EU sometimes and in other regions we don't play as disciplined as we would play in official game. And I mean, in my opinion, for example, I put you the top esports series that we had in MSI or the Gen G. I don't feel personally like there was an insanely big gap from them to us in terms of like mechanics or like like champion management, but I think there was a really big difference in terms of like how they are like using their spells, how they are controlling spaces in the Drake, for example. I think we lost the first game where we were in a really decent spot because we got completely f***ed in a team fight in Drake because they were just very good at using their spells, and like the fight was over before we could even hit them once.
Yeah.
And we were like maybe 1k goal ahead or something like that. It's really crazy because they practice this so much, and I feel like they know how to protect their damage dealers in fights, who can die, who cannot die. All this, I feel like they perfection so much that I think we are like really far away to beat them in that.
So how do you think we get closer?
I mean, I think you have to improve at this. And
do you think it's the practice? Like, do you just think we need to be better at practicing?
Dude, I think that it's a product of your environment. Look, like if FNATIC plays every single region in our team doing the same side lane tier 2 thing, everyone in our region is going to understand how that works. And some of that's going to come from Mark as an individual, but they'll generally get a better understanding of that. And then once that's locked in, it becomes something you don't have to think about as much. And it's like if you're going to practice against teams who already have a higher level of fundamentals than you, then you get to move on to focusing on the next thing. When like it's as easy as breathing to figure out where you need to put your side lanes, then you can focus on cooldown management.
But I guess
setup,
like my only frustration with that argument, because I've heard it a bunch of times before, is that like people sit there and go, oh, well, like all these other teams in Korea get to play against Gen G, so when they go for a dragon setup, they get punished.
But it's
for
not.
doing
But
things
my
wrong.
point isn't even.
But I'm like,
you
but Gen
need
G had to become that.
Yeah. No, my point isn't that you need a Gen G. My point is the average needs to be better.
That's fair. That is fair.
The thing
that,
is
that,
like
that makes sense to me.
We can look Razork in the face right now and be like, "You're going to be disciplined." But then, let's say not this week, but then regular season, he's going to go scrim some team. You know what I mean? And they're just going to be griefing. And what's he going to do? Not hit them? Punish them?
That
and then
make
what?
sense.
And then what's the practice? What is the actual practice there? Like, all right, you didn't punish him because he wouldn't do this in a real stage game, and so now we're in an even more unrealistic game state.
Do you think it's bad habits builds?
I think it could be part of it. Yeah.
I think that like it's hard to teach League of Legends.
No, that does make actually like honestly, you make a very valid point.
Well, this is the problem that like let's talk about G2 2016, 2017. Terrible team internationally for the most part. And the big thing that they tried to do, I would say somewhat foolishly, is they tried to change their scrim practice so they just played less aggressive because it wasn't realistic. And they got worse internationally because they were like, real players wouldn't do this. But then they just were putting themselves in like super contrived game states where they like could have killed someone 2v2 but chose not to because it was going to result in like higher level of macro. Like it's you can't like practice is a big deal. I think it's really important, but you can't force
I get
lessons out of practice. Like you can anything that's a set play, set up on dragon, yada yada yada. But like that cooldown stuff is only going to matter if you play against a team that is as good at setup and as good at team fighting, let's just call it team fighting or fighting, that they truly understand that and they're going to punish you.
But I think even like Genji as a team, they don't practice right the same way that they play in officials. Like we played them recently, scrims in the Arabia Saudi Cup. We got completely stomped by them, but you could see that the way they played that scrims, they were also mega relaxed and they were like, not disrespecting, but they were not as disciplined as they were maybe in a really important game. And I think it's something that happens to everyone, but I think they're just like way better at doing it consistently. That's why like when they're in official game, it just comes naturally. But even in EU, like it's very rare that you see a game that's everyone is 100% focused.
Yeah.
And like there are no solo kills in like 2v2 or mid top, and that the game is like very, very coordinated. That is very rare that happens. But in officials, it's a mix of everything. People are like, it can be a game fight. People are a bit stressed. They are like, oh, I'm afraid to do a mistake, so I'm gonna give up this 3 CS of gold because I don't want to, maybe get the lane volatile and maybe I get dove. But in scrims, you will actually go for these 3 minions. Maybe you lose like 20% HP or 30% HP, and then you are getting dove on next wave. Something like this happens, but in states is like way different. This is like different feeling. I don't know how to explain. For example,
no, it's actually completely understandable. Like, because one of the things I like veterancy and experience when you're in that game 5 and you did lock in the Nidalee, right? that was you being, because I think you make a great point when you're in game 5. A lot of players like, I don't want to be the one to make the mistake.
Yeah, game 1, game 5, like nobody kills anybody until like 15 minutes.
You're the type of player, at least the way that I watch you, you're the type of player that goes, I have to play exactly the same in game 5 as I did in every other game that I've played this series. Because you do, right? Like that is ultimately what separates the good teams from the best ones, being able to play at your best in every situation. And the stress, like, does the stress bother you personally? Or yeah, exactly, right? That's like, you can pick that Nidalee because you can sit there and go, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to play my game. It's just another game to me. It's a best of 1 now instead of a best of 5, right?
Yeah.
But I completely understand, actually, because
I mean, it's also just so much easier said than done. Because like I'm almost every single pro player I know, right? At least in like a formal conversation, it's gonna be like, nah, I'm good. I'll always be good. I'll always be good. And then there's, I think for a lot of the players, like a lot of people in general, that when they're like, yeah, I'll be fine, don't worry, like they're not, right? You can see.
Well, I mean,
like,
no,
even
it's
if they're
talked about
like,
it publicly, right? Like,
yeah,
he
no, and
has
some
talked
people
about how
do.
the pressure gets to him, especially in high stress situations.
And I'll say I really appreciate when people do, but even then, there's so many people throughout the history of League that you could see they struggle with pressure. And if you were to talk to them behind the scenes, they'd be like, yeah, it really gets to me. But they're always going to put on that strong face, like, yeah, nothing is going to change me. But then you watch their scrims and their stage games, and you're like, something doesn't add up.
Thank you so much for talking to me about this. Like, and I appreciate your candidness as well, because you've been very honest about you and FNATIC, along with like, which is obviously very difficult for some teams to do. But how do you think the rest of Europe is going to do? Like, do you think that we have a good shot internationally? Like, I don't even know what a good shot for us even is anymore. Like, I guess we're still trying to get back to the quarterfinals because we haven't been there now.
Let's let him decide.
I think Matt is gonna win Worlds. No, that's what they said. They said we are gonna win Worlds next year, and they actually qualified to Worlds. So now they have to win it.
Yeah.
No. Otherwise, they would be lying to us.
I like that grin for podcast listeners. That's a big grin on Razork's face.
I don't know. I think personally that to the subject of like our overall level of our region, I think we're really reliant on stars, right? You need someone like Marek who like is obsessed about the game and side lane and has a level of knowledge that he can share with other people, or a Caps, right? Because like G2 are a great team overall, you know, and like I expect to see you guys in the final. We'll talk about Munich here in a second, but they're a team that still has leveraged Caps very heavily at their best and at their worst, right? And like, I wouldn't say that he's the same as Marek, where I'm sure Caps has a very high game understanding, but whenever we talk about Marek, everyone he's ever played with is like, this guy is the GOAT of side lanes. Like, that's clearly something he shares with the rest of the team. Caps, high individual level. I'm sure he does a lot of the stuff, but
I mean, he also is very good on side lanes.
He's also very good on side lanes, but like, I don't know if he commands the same. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like the Marek thing, I've heard backed up by every player I met. The Caps intangibles past individual skill, I'll say I'm sure there's stuff there. I just don't know 100% what it is. Mickey as well, obviously, like very proactive in trying to push leads, generate things. My point is, like, I think that it's just like, it's not, if we're ever going to see success, it's going to come down to the right team at the right time. Because fundamentally, that problem of practice is always going to exist. Like,
do you agree, or do you think it's a practice thing? What do you think?
I mean, as I said, I feel like the culture of practice, for example, in Korea, I think it's usually more disciplined, but I'm pretty sure they don't play, like I said before, like they play on stage in practice. They like try new stuff because that's what the practice is for in the end, to just play new stuff and learn how things work, and maybe like how you imagine the Genji scrims are when there is a new patch and they're like, oh, I think this champ is strong, and they're just gonna pick it and they completely run it down. It probably happens. So I think it's a mix of everything, right? Like I feel like having good practice is also really important. But I think the players needs to be also really good. Like you said, if you have bad players that cannot like challenge Asian players in lane, then there is no way you can even get to
start playing.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I think that everyone wants, especially from a public perspective, everyone wants that silver bullet where they're like, oh,
it's true.
LEC was just better at this, or if NA was just better at this, or whatever. And I just don't ever think that it's that simple. And I think that like the reality is scrims are scrims, you know?
Yep.
Maybe there's one or two less where they're goofing around, but I also just think that like when you play on average against players that are higher skill level, and I think on average you can say that LCK and LPL players on average at the least, right? Are better. Like you just are going to get better as a result of that.
I mean,
gives you more room to focus on other stuff. And I just don't think this, as much as I wish there was a silver bullet that was like, Razork, if you just woke up and did 50 push-ups every day, you'd be hella jacked, and that would be enough for us to win worlds. Like, there's that answer just doesn't exist.
It's super. I mean, that's a fair point. Like, I appreciate I could come across a bit harsh. I apologize. It's fine. But it's easy for me to sit there and go like, why aren't FNATIC disciplined? And you can just be like, these reasons. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And then you're just like, man, I see it. We want to, it's clear that you recognize all these issues, but it's not even a year. Like, you guys have been playing together the full year now. You've had the full roster, and it's still some of these things are still really difficult to overcome. So I admire your honesty, and I admire the fact that you guys work so hard. I know that we've talked a lot about philosophical things in the podcast today, and I really appreciate your insight. I do want to get your quick thoughts on season finals.
No, we give a little bit of time here.
Do we?
Yeah, screw it, we'll go long.
But I am also curious, when you see Mad, when you see G2, to me, you all have very defined playstyles, and I'm going to be a bit oversimplified, but I think of FNATIC as the very early game defined team, a team that is very driven by the fact that you're able to leverage the fact that, in my opinion, you have very reliable laners for the most part, and you are able to build leads that you can leverage to snowball the game. It's just in your mid game, something sometimes go wrong, whether it be objective setups or map play, whatever it is. Things fall apart a bit and they get a bit chaotic, right? Mad Lions is who I define as the creative team. The team that's always coming up with new stuff. The way that they break open the game is by catching you off guard. Sometimes in draft, I think it was game 5, they had just 3 pushing lanes, which going into the draft, I was like, oh, I wasn't actually expecting this, but they just had push, push, push. And then their Amumu invaded your red, right? And I imagine that I was watching Cadral's review afterwards, and he was laughing that this tiny present was just walking into your face. And it was what am I supposed to do? They're all wearing the same skins, and I'm being invaded by an Amumu right now.
I kind of knew it though.
Yeah, I mean, of course, because it's 3 pushing lanes, right? It's what he's supposed to do as a jungler. You'd probably do the exact same thing. But that type of creativity is where they can find advantages in the game, because they leverage what they do in the draft to get these winning lanes to then bully you in the game. And then G2 is who I think is the best macro team that we have in Europe, the team that has a tendency to sometimes fall behind in lane, but they know how to navigate through this concept of, we'll always trade an objective. We know how to play on sides. Multiple times I've seen Caps fall behind in mid. I think there was a game against you where he was 0-2, and then at 20 minutes, he had 250 CS on Corki. He's up in experience over Marek, and he's now 3 items on his Corki, right? That's how I see all the teams. So I'd love to know what you think of all the teams and how they all kind of bucket.
I mean, I think G2 and us, we have really similar playstyle.
Oh, really?
I just feel G2 lately had worse early games than us, but they have more resilience. I feel their ability to just come back into the game and never give up. And I feel they are really good at punishing mistakes, in my opinion, where I think we are way better in early game, in my opinion. And but when we fall a bit behind, we are not that good at reacting at, okay, they shouldn't be here. We just send it because this is the best play we will ever have, this fight. And we are not that good at recognizing that. And Mad Lions, I think you define it pretty well. I feel they are more we want to pick these champs. We want to pick comfort, winning lanes. And then, they just win by picking you up in jungle or just doing decent Drake setups. And then they just take over from there. But I think Mad is a team that, even from looking at their videos on YouTube, their coach and the team, they really want to use every single second to pressure enemy. They don't want to let them breathe. Where I think that sometimes that is not that good, in my opinion. I feel sometimes it's completely fine to just give up some jungle control. As you said before, that they were camping in the bush permanently.
Yeah.
We don't do that a lot because we feel okay, it's way better to just take a reset here, do our camps, and then we will have another timer to pressure them, and we are going to take more than if we just stay here in the bush and hope that enemy jungle will face check the bush or someone will face check. And I think that's maybe you can see that Eljoya is a part of this because he's the shot caller of the team. And Marek is kind of the shot caller of our team. So it's just the team gets defined by like
by the loudest
by
voice.
the leaders.
Yeah.
So
And I think that like when I look at Mad, I like the way that you both describe it. To me, it's like they're a team that's willing to play poker. Like they'll bluff, they'll make plays that aren't on paper like guaranteed high value plays.
I mean, I also think they do make some very solid macro moves.
No,
like,
sure. But I think that they're a team that's much more than anyone else willing to just risks, like take these small risks to stay an extra wave, to give up setup, to hope that they catch somebody. And I can't say if that's like because they're not as like sometimes it does feel like they struggle to end when they don't get those plays. I do feel like of the three teams, like they're the least adaptable of the three of you, where like there are circumstances, certainly in your most recent series, right, where like you guys kind of both threw it back and forth, like you threw a game, they threw a game. But in general, like they're the team that when they're in a lead and they're pushing a lead, they look really good. They look really in control. They set up one or two of these bush traps. They don't work. And sometimes those things like they're not as clean around playing around side lanes as you are, or as good as G2 at finding those opportunities. And G2 are by far most adaptable, but also right now, I think probably the least consistent early game team that we have.
Oh, because I remember now, because it was the game one you lost to the MF, right? Like MF just won bot lane, and then she got
MF won bot lane,
prio,
and then it was the play around top side. I don't remember.
I mean, they had MF, we had Jin. Of course,
this was the game where you're.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Can we talk about Jin really quick? Because I wasn't gonna bring it up because I was like, there's so much stuff. This champ looks useless. Why are you picking Jin, bro?
I think every ADC was banned there.
It was. I can tell you all the bans. So bans from them was Azir, Yone, Ashe, Ken, and Ziggs. And then they picked MF Ez.
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys banned Smolder, and then Corki, and then Jin.
There's a lot of 80s in League of Legends.
Yeah. But the problem is, like, so what?
I don't think there is any ADC.
Caitlyn maybe? Draven maybe? Into MF?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that Noah doesn't play Draven.
Right.
Because he never played it. You don't have to be a genius that Noah is not feeling comfortable playing
It's a psyop. He's been training it this entire time. Where the bro's trying to...
And Caitlyn, I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not a bot laner, but I don't think the matchup is good against MF.
Also fair.
So...
No, I mean, like, in my logic is that you pick Jin because Jin is one of the few champs that can fight strong pushing lanes. Like, I've seen Jin into Caitlyn, I've seen Jin into Draven, I've seen Jin into Varus, like, champs that are just as strong in lane. Jin is like the neutral because he can farm safe and he can fight you.
50-50 lane kind of. Yeah. And then, I think MF it will be a better champ no matter what, but Jin can provide utility. Maybe he hits the W. Ult is actually really annoying in team fights. Ours to pick people.
But also Rumble Jin, like very powerful siege, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I just feel
so
like
much zone control. So like I
this is the classic draft where on paper it looks good, and then I read the nameplates and I'm like, bro.
Well, it's not even like to me. It's just
because I love you. I love Oscar's doing good. He builds a lead, bro. He's like 1.2k ahead, and it just doesn't feel like a lead. And then Noah's playing a not like a hyper carry. So what are you guys gonna do?
I mean, in my opinion, the reason why you lost that game was like a large part of it was just the mid control. Super always got to push, and like MF, I think she's super annoying because of how fast she moves, right? But also it was Cassante, full tank, Maokai, plus Poppy. Two of them had Locket.
That Poppy pick.
Yeah.
Bro. I mean, to be fair, like the game was like rough, but was rough, but it was like close, and it was just that like it was.
But this
one
to
pick.
me is a great example of like I was surprised by how standard Mad played in game one, but like their draft, like Noah won't kill anyone. Right? And that Poppy made your life miserable.
And Rels.
And Rels' life miserable. Yeah.
Like we had a comp that we wanted to actually engage on the MF because it was their main damage. They had Ezreal and MF. So we just wanted to one-shot the MF, but we actually couldn't because we had no one to tank Maokai ulti. Yeah. So if they were first, we had to enter. And then if Maokai ultis, so one guy will die, Maokai ulti, MF ulti, one guy is completely
fed. You just die in the travel duration by R. Yeah.
And if I just try to go on MF, if she is like really mispositioning, then Poppy will just W.
Bro, and there was that one angle right at the end of the game where you found her, and then she's Sonya's. True. And then that El Yoya taunts you, and he goes, imagine not pressing tab or some shit. Or he was like MF Sonya's XDD or some shit. Bro, they were... Does that get to you when they type?
I don't read chat.
Okay.
That's good.
Like, even Oscar told me that after Mirwin solo killed him, game 3, he typed something in Spanish, but I'm actually so locked in the game that I can't even see the chat.
Okay, fair. So you're resistant to the chat.
Yeah.
It's important.
I mean,
Especially
in
for the TL third time rematch.
Yeah. And Wunder. I had Wunder.
Yeah, I
in
know.
TL.
I was like, that man is the original mental warfare enthusiast.
I will say EU is probably cultivated pretty well to dealing with chatters.
Yeah.
Because I swear,
I don't know if that's a good thing, but yes.
but like I remember as well, like EU teams were like typing at Faker when the first time they met him. You know, like EU players love to type.
He was typing Wunder to Faker too also, but I don't think he replied.
Yeah,
it was words.
Looking at Munich, right? Day 1, day 2, you get to wait, you get to see your opponent. What are your expectations? I think I know what people expect, but let's just
I love how we have to get that in.
No, because the thing is like Munich is this weekend. It's gonna be a Masters Finals. It's MDK versus G2, and then it's you versus the winner. And like we've talked a lot about, you've been very open about like what the team needs to work on, kind of the weaknesses. But you're the number 1 team. You're at the top of the league. I don't know. I want to hear about this weekend, man. Worlds, whatever, but it's still far away. Let's talk about LEC.
Yeah.
Like, are you facing MDK or G2 in the finals?
Actually, I don't know. I mean, I don't mind who do we face because I feel like we can beat both, but I just want to beat G2, man. Like I lost 3 finals to G2 already. I didn't win a single title. And yeah, I saw the stage in Munich there. It's pretty big and it's going to be pretty hype. So probably beating G2 in that stage, getting my first trophy in LEC. Yeah, sounds like a dream, honestly.
Yeah.
Sounds like a dream.
No offense to MDK, I love MDK, but like...
winning against MDK, it's also fine for me.
No, you'll take the win, I get you. But there's a certain like amount of... If you want to win a trophy in this region, you have to go through G2. And I still feel like that's the case. And
I mean, the only teams that qualified for Worlds were the ones that beat G2.
True.
You know, so like it was the one thing that separated BDS from MAD is that MAD did beat them and BDS couldn't.
BDS was very close.
They were very close.
Yeah. That was a weird series to rewatch. I was gone for the weekend and I came back and I was like, I hadn't looked at the results yet.
But that to me was a great example of like the pressure getting to a team.
Yeah.
Like especially if you've been reverse swept twice, like
they're just not. Yeah, the game.
But in that case, like.
You just pick Nidalee.
The pressure, the pressure should be for G2, right?
It should be.
But I don't know why I felt like they were gonna win, even when they were 2-0 losing.
Bro, it's plot armor. It's insane.
Yeah.
I feel like most teams feel that way. It's just the clout. They've got the
but like
aura.
Because I feel like I apologize if you answered this before in a separate interview or something. But like, what was the mental like when G2 is beating you? Because like you got better each game in that summer final. Yeah. Like you went from 2K to 4K to 8K gold lead. What's the mental like there?
Okay, after we threw the second game, I said in the talk that we have for the draft, I said, guys, we are not being able to close out the game. We don't have to be a genius for that. So I think we should maybe draft a bit of scaling. But the coaches said, guys, if you want to beat G2, you have to win the games with these leads, which I agree. If you have the Renekton and the Renekton is 3K ahead, you should be able to like stomp the team fight in Drake. But the third game, we were like even more ahead. We were like 8K and we were still throwing. Like, I don't know. Like, it's mega painful.
Of course it is. No, I'm just like, how do you stop that from happening again? Because obviously you then, like, you came into season finals. People are like, FNATIC, I don't know if we can trust them. Yeah. You 3-0 BDS. You do then beat MDK in a crucial game 5. And I think, like, the fact that Noah, I saw him on mid, MF, that play where he flashes forward and he gets that kill onto Frescow. That was game 3, not game 5.
Game 3, yeah.
Yeah. But like those type of plays are the things like, oh yeah, that's the FNATIC the fans want to see, right?
Even that play was interesting because it felt like he was so uncertain.
He was. That's
such
what
a
it looked like to
flash.
me. You know, like he gets nice trade, he gets damage, and his brain says I can kill, but he immediately stops and goes,
wait, am I throwing the game right now?
Yeah. But like, how do you guys stop that from happening? Because like on a stage like that, I imagine the pressure's high. Like G2,
we felt like the reason why we lost the final against G2 was them taking their best chance to come back and being like so creative sometimes. And of course they had scaling picks with Own and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it was us also going for unnecessary fights. So we really shifted our mindset, and you could see the BDS games like when we got ahead, we were just not fighting. We were just like getting camps, drakes, and if enemies decide to fight, it's on them. But we were just gonna play them up and be disciplined. And I think that series were very clean. But here it comes the FNATIC thing that we don't know. We are a bit undisciplined or inconsistent. 2 weeks after, we went like 1-9 in scrims against VDS. So we 3-0 them, and then we lose every single game, right? In scrims. So this is what I mean, that I don't know what's the difference between practice and official games, because...
all I'll say is, imagine being an LCK commentator and getting to put your faith in Gen G. And we have you, G2, and MDK, where like MDK appear out of nowhere after bombing 2 straight seasons. We have you guys who will lose to anyone and also beat anyone, and G2 who somehow win despite playing some of the worst early games imaginable.
All that tells me is that the scrim data at Worlds going to be useless, baby. I
Hell
don't know that.
Maybe. Maybe. But that's why it's so fun to watch you, no?
Hell yeah.
That's what we like. There's the marketing. All right. FNATIC versus he's going to predict FNATIC versus
Obviously.
G2.
Well, it's
in the
finals.
Assuming. I'm predicting G2 to beat MDK. I don't think that's an insane prediction.
It's really hard for me
close, though.
not to predict G2 just making the lower bracket run. Like, the mental block for me is there against, like, MDK have no mental block against G2, which is why a part of me feels that their series will be closer than if FNATIC versus G2 in final.
Yeah, I am nervous about your
That
guys'
is my
mental.
honest opinion.
I don't want to
and admittedly, none of that is gameplay related. It is all mental. And that for me, like when I watched MDK playing versus you guys, not to say that you guys came across as stressed, but MDK were nothing but having fun. In all of their losses, I saw them always typing in all chat. In the pregame lobby, I saw them like typing at Noah, stuff like, when are you going to give me MF? Like, oh, Noah, best MF EU. Like, they seem to always just be having a laugh, playing with full comfort. And like that mental block isn't there for them. But I can't say the same for FNATIC. So like that's my take. I think that G2 is going to make the lower bracket and they're going to be first place again. So my eyes are on you guys to prove to me that you have the mentor. Because I know you have the skill. The skill is not a question to me. I've seen the potential. I know your ceiling. We've talked extensively in this podcast about how good you can be. But in my opinion, the can be doesn't matter. All that matters is if.
I think it will be down to how we manage the stress in the big stage, in my opinion. I think G2 Mat will play the day before, as you said. So whoever wins will be more comfortable because they already played in big crowd. Where we might be a little bit shaky in the first games. And I think, if you lose first game against G2, you are already not, but you are not in the best position.
Yeah, you're in the
right?
hole for the mental game at least.
So, I mean, I think you have a valid point, but I trust my boys.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You need to, yeah.
It's weird because this is one of the finals where I feel like I'm putting the most down to like form on the day and mental.
100%.
Because I don't think G2 are like unshakable. Like,
anyone can definitely beat anyone. It wouldn't surprise me if Mad won and it was you versus Mad in the finals. And I think from a mental standpoint,
that would surprise me, but like
I could see it.
I could see it happening.
Yeah.
100%. Regardless. Razork, you've been a fantastic guest, man.
No, I really appreciate your honesty, man.
Thank you.
It's
Vedi was
super
Vedi came
valuable.
in ready to go. He had an angle. He chased it. So thank
I
you for all the
apologize to
insight.
all the listeners. We talked about like a lot of different things. It kind of chaotic, but at the same time, I enjoyed the organic conversation we could just have with you. It was really nice. I really appreciate your honesty and your insight.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Maybe, I don't know if I shared too many things
Maybe.
about FNATIC,
Yeah.
but I think you don't have to like hear it from me, right? You can just watch our gameplay and see how
like,
we do.
who's going to gate this? The only teams that are going to benefit from this information are Worlds teams who are too lazy to watch your VODs. MDK and G2 probably already know this stuff, right? So it's like,
And I don't think maybe the Asian players are gonna watch this podcast anyway. So.
YouTube auto subtitles, bro. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I keep up with
I
eBay
can't
stuff.
wait for just an interview with Canyon where he's like at Worlds and they're like, so what do you
You
think
just
about
leaked a bunch of
Razork? And
stuff
it's like,
in the
well,
Euphoria
actually, it was kind
podcast.
of, I feel really prepared. I watched that one Euphoria episode and he just told us everything.
By the way, you need all Western teams prep your Korean players before they go on LCK's secret boardroom. The amount of information that has been leaked on that show is insane, bro. Umti's just in there leaking all the TL info.
A complete random tangent. I need to see you guys beat TL at Worlds this year, bro. Like you gotta
No. We're gentle parenting. Hey, bud. I'm no pressure, but it'd be great.
You have to do this.
It'd be great. No. It'd be great because if we put pressure on, I'm afraid the mental will be bad. No bad.
It's not even about the mental. It's like it's one of those things where at some point I have to believe that it's not a mental block. Like the rage will overcome the mental block. You know what I mean? Where you're just so angry at a team that it's no longer like I'm scared. It's I'm furious. You know, like and like that's gonna stop you from feeling nervous.
Look. Let's just start with getting Kassadin off the champ pool. One step at a time, brother.
Banning 6.
Banning
no
6.
Kassadin.
Banning the APA champs. Just a thought. Just personal. I'm not there for the scrims. I'm not there for the strategy sessions. But
I
like,
cannot wait to watch. I'm gonna be that caster. I'm gonna watch you on stage, and I'm gonna see that cam where you got your cheeky little smile, and you're gonna be like, "Hey, Mark, maybe we should just think about banning the 6."
Don't even hover.
Yeah,
bro.
like,
Don't even
maybe
hover
we should
that
just think about
Kassadin.
it. You know, like how about we gave you your Kassadin last time? How about you give me this one this time?
Yeah.
All right.
The art of negotiation.
Yeah, it's a good trait.
Yeah. Regardless, brother, like, good luck this week in Munich. I'm
you so much.
excited.
Good luck.
Whoever you end up facing, I hope you can finally get that final. You know what I mean? It's been a long
You
time
don't have a
coming.
title yet, right?
Nope.
That's crazy, man.
Lost 3 finals to G2, as I said. And this could be the 4th one. No,
No.
it's not gonna be.
Stop.
It's not gonna be the 4th one.
Look.
Because we're gonna lose to Matt.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
On that note, yeah, it's perfect. This has been episode 21 of the Euphoria podcast, the final episode for the season. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. Check us out this weekend in Munich, EMEA Masters Finals on Friday. Saturday, of course, G2 versus MDK, and the winner versus FNATIC for the grand finals to see who will lift the LEC trophy, who will be our first seed at Worlds. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.